Where the fuck is McClay?
Action.
Awesome. This is the Bogcast, episode 64. We are brought to you by Bang Salon. Come get all your hair needs, including cuts, natural colors, vivid colors, extensions, shampoo and stylings, all under one roof at Bang Salon. Find and message Bang Salon on Instagram at Bang Salon, at BANGDSALON. Use promo code
Bogcast
for 20% off your first visit. So come on down and get banged by Jordan. But if you really try to bang her, I'll fucking kill you. Cool.
All right, check us out on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, all your favorite podcatchers. Like and comment. Hopefully you're already subscribed. If you're not, subscribe. But let us know how we're doing, and let us know what you think about this guest in this episode. We appreciate it. All right, brother.
Sweet. We have a very, very exciting guest to join us today. I'm very honored to have legendary news anchor and actor Mike Watkiss. How are you doing today?
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you. I'm doing great, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so you've pretty much, I feel like I grew up with you because you were in my television, pretty much, I don't know, I would say daily or at least weekly.
In the latter stages of my career, I had this phenomenon that really was wonderful. Young people, your age, coming up to me and say, "I've been watching you all of my life," and I can't tell you what a wonderful experience that is, because for many years covering the news here in the Valley, I felt I'm one of those old school guys that thought I'm a guest in people's home. And so I got to go in. They don't want a spicy guy like me hanging around their living room for very long. They want me to come in, tell them a story, be straight with them, and get out the door. And so young people telling me that they grew up watching me. It's just it was a wonderful experience. It has been, and it was a nice way to sort of segue out of television.
Well, it wasn't just me. My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom, so she was a News Channel 3 person. So that was on every morning and every evening.
Tell her thank you for me and that I'm grateful that she let me into your home. Yeah. Honestly, it was one of those kind of things I never wanted to take for granted. That people had choices. And if they're letting you into their living room, you better respect them.
Yeah.
To a certain degree. To a great degree. You can't take that for granted.
Yeah, it was just very interesting because, like I said, I feel like I grew up with you, and then I remember you retiring, and it was a big deal in the Valley here. And then all of a sudden, because I'm involved with the film community also, and then I see you're an actor on film sets with like some of my, acquaintances and stuff. I was like, holy shit, that's awesome.
I'm just sort of an old circus act. Television was, a big segment of that, but now I'm just trying to do something else. And
busy?
Staying pretty busy. Busy enough. I've been scribbling on some, my notes for some sort of book if I ever finish that, and done a couple of films since.
That's cool.
In the interim.
How did you start in the news thing, though? I mean, you didn't come here to the Valley or start here in the Valley, did you? You got your start elsewhere.
Well, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember a TV show
That's where we're going.
By the name of A Current Affair.
That's exactly where we're going.
Totally.
Okay.
I remember that and hard copy.
That was a huge deal for us. I mean, let's be honest. Like that was the TMZ internet before the internet.
Yeah, totally.
It was the story that really. I mean, it was the show that really started and created the venue for all of those shows that were sort of had become knockoffs of that. And it was a revolutionary show for better or worse. And my fingerprints are all over that show. Well, I got involved in that early in my career. I started many years ago writing for campus and community newspapers when I was a kid. And then got into radio, and then did a stint in television, local news, and then I got picked up by Current Affair, sort of on a whim. I don't know how they found me.
How old were you when you started Current Affair?
Well, I've been, like I say, I've been doing a lot of mid-20s. Let me think. I graduated from college. I got out of graduate school, worked in radio for a while, and wrote for newspapers. And I got my first TV job in 1984 in my hometown, Salt Lake City. Worked there for 4 years. And then sort of out of the blue, I got fired from that job. And thank God, simultaneously, while I was getting fired from that job, I got this job offer from these guys in New York with this crazy little show called A Current Affair. I'd never even heard of the show when they flew me back to New York to audition and talk to them. And they sat me down in this little room and said, watch this and see what you think of it. And they turned on this crazy show. Again, I'd never seen it, never heard of it, and I'm just sort of there auditioning. And the stories start running, and I'm thinking, are they serious? They really put this on television? But my mind was sort of made up for me because, like I say, I immediately got canned from the other job, so I needed to take it, and it made all the difference in my life. It was a great experience. I was with them for many years and traveled all over the world.
Yep.
What was an audition like for that?
Whatever, they want to come in and see if you can actually speak and stand and, not drool on yourself. I don't know, whatever. Yeah. I mean, by the time they've looked at tapes, I think
they've probably been watching you for a while at that point.
I guess. I wasn't new to the business at that point.
Were you nervous moving to New York? I mean, that's like a big city, and then...
Well, I was more nervous because I had just gotten married, so that was a wonderful experience, and thank goodness I've had the same partner with me for many years. But I just got married, and I flew back to New York to start this job with this show that I'd really never heard of, flying around chasing Michael Jackson and serial killers and. The standard fare of A Current Affair for the next, nearly 10 years, nearly a decade.
Do you remember the first thing that you did for them?
Oh, my God, no. Honestly, no. I mean, I remember so many stories, but, the first one. Early days, it was sort of a beautiful mix because... it was still looking for that extraordinary story in the out-of-the-way place. Yep. And then all of these sort of tabloid shows sort of bought into basically celebrities and sex because it's easier. Yep. But when early days, it was really beautiful because we were going out and finding the wacky little story in the middle of nowhere. And those were great. So, and that's when they hired me on. But like I say, with you talk about all the shows that have been spawned from that, they all sort of cashed in on the quick fix of celebrity and glitz and glamour and sex, and it's they're not as interesting.
Yeah,
it's on another level now.
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah. God, I just had a question about current affairs. I was going to ask you, do you get assigned the stories, or do you look for the stories yourself?
Well, it depends on where you are in your career and how much clout you have. When you're a kid, when I was running around for a radio station in Salt Lake City or a young reporter at a local news, you get assigned stories. But yes, if you're interested in the business, hopefully you start thinking for yourself and thinking, that's a story I'd like to do. And you I think earn some independence over the years, and I was very grateful to the folks at Channel 3 for many years because they gave me great latitude to really pursue stuff that I found important and interesting, and you don't find that very often. I was lucky that when I came in, I'd already sort of had a track record, so they knew what they were getting with me, but then they did the courageous thing you don't see in TV management. Once they said, we hired him to be him, let him be him.
Exactly.
And Channel 3 That's for awesome. A while was beautiful in that way. It hired a whole cast of characters, myself included. And I think that's when we got a real core following in here, that Arizona family thing, because we just had a bunch of fun, interesting, pretty smart characters running around doing some interesting television, and I think
they were personalities instead of robots.
Well,
so it was like news, but it was
I don't
fun.
want to condescend about my colleagues. It was a great moment.
No, Channel 3 was a fun news
It was a great moment, and I'm really grateful that I had a piece of the action.
Yeah,
it was a different thing, being that a lot of people would still go there for the news, but there was a lot of people that would go there to watch their favorite news personalities.
For sure.
Yeah, that was a weird thing, I imagine, being a journalist. And I mean, I don't know, was it a weird thing?
Again,
to have a following like that?
All I can say is I was grateful every time somebody came up to me and said, I recognize your son, because if they didn't, man, then I was in trouble.
Let's go to the other side. Would it ever mess something up if you were doing doing an investigation or something where you got recognized and it would ruin something that you were working on?
I laid low and I hung out in my share of dark bushes and alleys to do my work. I'm not going to lie to you over the years. But you know what? I've always thought that you sort of be straightforward. Some people sort of like to approach things surreptitiously. I was the kind of guy that preferred to just come up to the front door, kick it down, and say, "What's up?"
Yep.
Let them know we're here, and let them know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Be honest with people, and then whatever. Then let the chips fall where they may.
Yep. Yep, and that's probably when you get the best reaction too, right? They don't have a time to think up a story or something.
Well, there is that. And everybody now understands sort of the soundbite in media. Maybe it was an unfair advantage we had back in my day, but it was still, you could sort of you get the Mike Wallace ambush interview. I did it myself more than a time or two. But you have to make sure you run the great risk of sort of losing the sympathy for the story. If the television reporter is uncivil or unkind, even if how bad the person may be, so those you have to execute delicately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I imagine that when the opposite happens, it can be. You have to kind of put a person in a position not to leave, because if that story walks away, the reason I'm talking about this is because I think of people like Nancy Grace and these people where, like you say, at some point you have to be not make the person angry. Does that make sense? Yeah. You don't want to have the person spout off on you, so you want to keep them around.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes you're hoping.
Isn't that good for television?
That volcanic explosion,
yes.
Knowing that the person, and perhaps that is illustrative of that person's personality. Anyhow, I got my job here in Phoenix because some guy threw a couple of punches at me on camera.
Oh, yeah.
The guys here in Phoenix saw me getting some guy throwing some punches at me. And literally the day after that segment ran on a national show, I got a phone call from the guys here in Phoenix. Said, "Hey, we saw you get punched on TV last night. That was great. Come work for us." Yeah. And that's how my wife and I and my family ended up here.
Well, why did you get punched?
Why did I get punched? Oh, there's a myriad of good reasons, I'm sure. Ask my wife.
No, I mean in that incident.
Along my checkered career, the current affair had gone. I got fired from. I used to say that I had been fired from every television or broadcast job that I have ever had. Channel 3 sort of wrecked that because I retired, sort of on my own terms, but that's the only job I didn't get canned from. So current affair, long history of tabloid television, but it was sort of going belly up. I had been canned along with some other notable reporters in a coup one day. And so I'm down and out in L.A. with my wife, and we had just had our first baby. So, and now I got a wife and a small son and no job, and I'm in L.A., and I'm literally down and out in Los Angeles. So after some months of being a self-pitying bum, I got off my rear end and took a freelance job with the other TV show, Hard Copy. Mm-hmm. Many of my friends, as a current affair was sinking, ended up at Hard Copy. And they offered me this freelance gig, and I was just going to go behind the scenes producer for this show or this segment, and I needed to go out and ambush this guy, this old man who apparently was running some sort of ads on late night television at the time, promoting some elixir that would cure everything from hangnails to cancer. The folks at Hard Copy had some had suspicions about these.
And they're like, well,
anyhow, the bottom line, they were doing a whole expose about, I think, sort of fraudulent medical practices.
Yeah, totally.
This was part of that. And they needed somebody to fly to. We were in L.A. They needed somebody to fly to Salt Lake City to
your old stomping grounds,
ambush this man who lived there at the time and confront him and give him an opportunity to defend himself. And he turned down all requests. And it was significant enough that this is one of those kind of things you sort of needed to pull the trigger, so to speak, and go out and say, "Look, you got to talk to us. We're here." It's not just to make them look bad, but with something like that, you have to sort of throw down.
Yeah. Well, they're scamming people.
You need to say something about this to defend yourself. Maybe there's a good explanation. Now's the time to say it. So anyhow, they put us on a plane. We fly to Salt Lake City, my hometown. I got to see a jazz game that night, so it was all good. Next day, I meet a camera crew, and we went out and confronted this man. Whatever intel they had was correct. We went into some parking lot in some suburb. Man walks out to his car. And, Sir, my name's Mike Watkiss from Hard Copy. I'd like to ask you, and boom! He throws a haymaker at me. Come on. Fortunately, he was a big, heavy-set older man and moved rather slowly, so we weren't in a lot of danger. But, and suddenly I'm thinking, okay, that was the money shot. This...
the camera guys help you out, or they just keep rolling?
If they're experienced, they just keep rolling.
Yeah.
Hopefully I really didn't break a sweat here. I just said, and continued the question. Sir, I'd like to ask you the question about boom. And he throws a couple at me, fumbles with his keys, gets in his car, and drives off.
And they all hit? They all connected, or?
No, not really. I graze,
Enough to...
I'd like to say that one night Tonya Harding threw a better punch at my cameraman than this guy threw at me. So a way better punch. So no,
did you give your cameraman shit for that for months?
No, I love him. Took one for the team.
I was going to ask you, what are the crew sizes when you are doing a lot of these?
Well, it depends. Back in the back in the great days when we had unlimited funds working for A Current Affair, we traveled with a sound man and a cameraman, and often a producer. I always liked to streamline my team, so if I could get rid of the producer, I didn't want somebody with me, but most of the time, most of my career has been me and a cameraman.
That's got to be a tight relationship.
Well, it's I don't know how it really works for other reporters, because I don't know if I actually operated like many other reporters, but I always gravitated to one or two people, guys, and some women along the way, thank goodness, sort of broke through the ranks. But I always tried to find the best shooter in the shop.
Latch on to him.
And I just found that I was simpatico with those guys. People who were good at that, the guys that at least did what I sort of did, they're the kind of guys who like to run into the trouble.
Yeah.
And if they didn't have that gear, we weren't going to work good together.
Well, they got to want to go where you're going to go. You were going deep.
Well, sometimes, and it just and go. And I'm sort of hyperactive, so I needed guys that wanted to do what I wanted to do. And there were some guys who could totally outwork me. They dragged me along, but
you guys probably motivated each other.
Yeah, I've thought about the relationship between the reporter and the camera, the shooter.
They know you.
And for me, it was just always when it worked, it was magical. We went out and I did some amazing stories with and I can tell you the handful of guys that I work with: James Apolotegui and Mike Hernandez, Adrian Campa and Mike Smith, Jim Cox, the guy who went down in the chopper that you guys will all remember. Yep. I mean, these guys, to me, these are legendary figures who I owe a lot more of my career to than I do anything I did.
That's very
they
cool.
Carried me. Oh, yeah,
Yeah, hell yeah, man.
They're in a visual business. They were that's the way it's done. You got to tell a visual story. You got guys who would invest in stories more than I would. It was like having not only a great cameraman, a great shooter, a Michelangelo, but you had a seasoned producer who understood the context of the story better than you did often. So I was blessed to work with people like that.
Wow. He's a multi-talented cameraman.
So you threw out a name I just got to latch onto, and that's Tonya Harding.
Yeah.
So the whole craziness that happened with Tonya Harding, and we all know about that. But I'd recently watched that movie over again.
I almost watched that last night.
It's a really good movie.
It's an outstanding film. The guy who wrote it and directed it contacted me before.
That's what I was going to ask.
We spoke a little bit, so I don't know.
Oh, that's awesome. You mean for information and knowledge of the story?
Yeah, he called me out of the blue, and And it just so happens that he had produced another film that is a favorite of my wife's, since I had watched it with her, familiar with this film. And this guy calls me and says, "Hey, I did this. That's my credentials, and now I'm about to do the Tonya Harding story, and I just want to talk to you a little bit because."
Yeah.
Who's the director?
We were there. You're going to ask me the guy's name.
I'll look it up.
Is something Kate and Leopold?
Okay.
Another movie,
yeah,
if you're
I've heard of
familiar
that,
with.
yeah.
That's that. I think he had done that prior, but I, Tonya was a great film.
I almost watched that last night. It's crazy
And having been there from like the opening
That's what
bell,
yeah.
I can tell you it captured the insanity pretty well.
I was going to ask you how crazy it was to be around that.
Well, it was
around those people in general, Tonya and her boyfriend and the security guard or whatever. I mean, that whole crew that she was running with was still together for a short period, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The band of knee whackers.
Yes.
Yeah, this was
band of knee whackers.
Yeah, it was led by my buddy Jeff Galooly.
Yes, Jeff Galooly.
I interviewed at length about that.
Craig Gillespie is his name, by the way.
Is that right? Yeah, okay. I got emails still from our communications. I just thought it was interesting. I thought he made a great film.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
So what about Michael Jackson? Like, how do you get assigned that story? And what was that like? What was your job to report on him about?
Early on, well, we were when I got hired at A Current Affair, I initially went with my young wife, and we went to New York and lived there for a couple of years. Then I got transferred out to be basically the L.A. Reporter bureau chief of this little renegade outpost out in L.A., where most of the show was in New York. And I thought, this is to my liking, because there's not a lot of parental supervision out there. And they want me to sort of go be the... Never ran the place, but I didn't run it completely off the rails either.
Yeah.
So I got sent out there. My wife and I went out to L.A., and shortly after we got there, there were a number of stories that occurred. It was sort of tabloid nirvana. A number of stories just exploded. I
remember all that.
That shook, basically, that transformed the American media at the time when cable television was fighting for an identity, long before the internet had come along. We basically still had a handful of channels on there, and cable was fighting for some significance. And in rapid succession, we had Heidi Fleiss, the Hollywood Madam. Mm-hmm. We had Tonya Harding. Mm-hmm. We had the L.A. riots. We had O.J. Simpson. Yeah. We had the Menendez brothers.
Wow, yeah.
It was, and we were, and all of these sort of transpired during the time when me and my wife landed in L.A., and it was head spinning.
That's like perfect timing, though.
Well, it was certainly a fascinating. And some of the stories, you lump them all together, they're so different. But they transformed our media in many ways. Tonya Harding was sort of the moment when the big three television stations that had sort of plugged their noses and said, "Oh my God, Current Affairs, the devil incarnate." That was the story where they basically threw in the towel and said, "We got to do it like they do." And I watched that happen.
Can't beat 'em, join 'em.
OJ, significant for so many reasons. But it was when cable was still sort of trying to find a footprint. There were cable news outlets on. And that was the story that showed them the business model of throwing in 24/7 with one story, and you could just beat it, because you
beat it to death.
And they found a business model that then sustained them as they took off, because they were fighting for an audience. And it's just interesting to see how these shows have impacted one another, again, for better or worse. And I just was really lucky, because I was there basically with an e-ticket on the thrill ride when it was just starting. And I've always just sort of pinched myself and grateful that I got a piece of that action.
Yeah, you've seen it evolve to what it is now. I mean,
and I saw all those great stories. We were there the morning they found the bodies of Ron and Nicole. We were one of the first crews on the scene.
Wow.
And when they had the crime tape up, and then going to Hurricane Katrina and 9/11, and I feel that I've had a unique or an interesting seat for American history. And again, I'm profoundly grateful for that.
You had to have a willingness to not be, I guess, stationary. Because how long would you be at these?
Like I say, I'm sort of hyperactive.
I mean,
My wife will tell you, I can't sit down to finish a meal, but you're moving. You're moving. I mean, sometimes you take up shop. I spent 3 months solid. Took up residence in the Marriott Hotel in Portland, Oregon during the Tonya Harding thing. Me and my crew just took over a wing of the a floor of the hotel and set up, because we were turning stories every day, multiple stories, magazine stories every day. It's one of those stories that just consumed the country.
And then they just hit after hit after hit rolling of that.
And they're always advancing. And this is when you mentioned some of the chronology of the story back when they got back and denying it all, and the gang started to fall apart. Everybody started pointing the finger at each other. And then we were still going to go to the Olympics, and that was the whole drama. Just about went to that Olympics, but I ended up having to stay and hold hands in Portland, but it was a great story, a lot of fun, a lot of memories.
Everyone just sees the final product of your reporting, but how much behind the scenes? I know there's of doing this story. I mean, you're constantly working on it, right?
Well, like I say, we just moved into the Marriott, so we were working 24/7.
Yeah,
and we had a table permanently reserved down at the hotel bar, and that's what we did. You're chasing stories every night. You're with a story like that, you got that. Like I say, it broke the dam, and everybody was on that story. There were there were days when Tonya Harding would, when she was obviously under suspicion but still preparing to go to the Olympics, and there was this skating rink inside this shopping mall that she skated at every day. And let me tell you, the elbows and fists that were flying around that skating rink would make an NHL game look very, because by every time she got on the ice, there were 70 crews from all over the world trying to get a shot of her doing the triple axel or whatever. It was insane. Connie Chung's there. The NBC Rising Star is there next to us. And you're just literally
everyone's fighting each other for it. The shot.
That was a little out of control. And this is why I think that film, I, Tonya, was. Yes. I mean, because it really created or conveyed a sense of lunacy.
Yes, exactly.
That I really hadn't seen prior to that.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. So, but another thing you brought up is the Michael Jackson. Like, how crazy was that? Following him and writing on him. I mean, or at the time, did you just think that this is?
No, there was nothing. It was nothing like I thought it was. This is normal, or this is.
Well, I read that you followed him from Singapore to Switzerland or something. Like, what does that mean? Like, he's doing a show there, and then are you like part of his like news media crew? Or
well, again, Michael Jackson was always saw his concert saw him perform live a couple of times. Incredible.
Yeah.
Really amazing.
Oh, he was always on
I
performance.
Bet. Yeah, I'm sure.
Well,
he was awesome.
Yeah, his performances were extreme. So I'm in Singapore on the Dangerous tour twice. Really mind-blowing. Wow. But all this to say, he was always a topic of sort of discussion, certainly in the tabloid industry. And basically what happened is one day the L.A. Times drops this bombshell that a young man is basically accusing Michael Jackson of the first round of inappropriate behavior.
Yeah.
L.A. Times drops this bombshell, and boom, the tabloid world goes nuts. And within hours, we got some word that Elizabeth Taylor, Michael Jackson's dear friend, was about to get on an airplane to fly from L.A. to Singapore, where Michael was on the Dangerous tour when the story broke. Suddenly you have Michael out on this $1 billion tour.
Yeah.
The size and scale of that concert is still just it takes my breath away. It was in a soccer stadium that housed more than 100,000 people, packed.
Jesus.
I mean, it was just a scene like you've never seen. Amazing performance. So anyhow, the Dangerous Tour is mid-tour when the story breaks. Suddenly, what's going to happen? Are they going to go over and arrest Michael Jackson? Somebody gets some intel at our New York office at A Current Affair that Elizabeth Taylor is going to get on an airplane and fly over to Singapore to be with Michael because they are dear friends. And my assignment was, if she gets on that plane, they didn't care if I was hanging on from the back of the rudder. Me and a cameraman better be with her on that plane. And those are the sort of mandates you get. I mean, it's like you win it or you don't win it. You either get the prize or you don't. So with that directive, one of my dearest and closest friends, an extraordinary Australian cameraman by the name of Alex Fragnito, worked with him. He was the ninja cameraman. Told him we're traveling, we're going, and we get to LAX, and this was way pre 9/11. Long before 9/11, so different. The security was, significantly different. We would have been arrested early on in this caper if it was today. We never would have made it. But we get right up. We get our tickets and first class tickets, of course, because if Elizabeth Taylor's going to fly, she's going to fly first class. So they book us first class tickets. Alex and I get into the waiting room with all of our gear because we may be on the road. We're going to. We're going to Southeast Asia or whatever, and so we better be ready. And we don't. And then she doesn't get on. There's no sign of her. They board the plane. We're standing around with basically, literally in the doorway between the waiting area and that little runway, the enclosed tunnel that will take you down there. And the ticket agents now, this is dragged on, and we're fighting for time because she's not on the plane. And we got to get on the plane or not. And she's telling
you got to make that
boys,
decision.
make the call, dude.
Yeah.
And it takes on and on and on, and we stall. And we're thinking, did she get on without us knowing? I mean, we watched the plane come up to the terminal. We'd been there early, she had not gotten on to our knowledge. And so suddenly they're about to call security then and arrest us. And we look out the window, and we see a limo driving up on the tarmac at the last minute.
No way.
A staircase sort of comes out from and she doesn't go up the tunnel. There's a staircase that they bring out.
What?
And limo, and Elizabeth Taylor, her husband Larry Fortensky, and the meanest, nastiest bodyguard. One of the meanest, nastiest bodyguards that I have ever encountered. Get off of that limo, scurry up those steps, and suddenly we're banging. We're on now. Blow past the ticket agent. If we were rude, I am so sorry. We probably were. Ended up crashing into the first class cabin of this plane as Elizabeth Taylor and her entourage are coming on, and so we're just all there. These flight attendants, very nice people from Singapore Airline, were terrified, just mortified that they had these two clashing, and they immediately knew what we were doing and who we were. And there were a couple of scribblers, English tabloid guys who'd gotten on the plane already, and Elizabeth Taylor and her bodyguard are in the business of knowing who we were. They had radar for that. So it made for a very interesting flight. All of us stuck in the first class cabin of that flight for the next 22 hours with a stop in Taipei. So it was a lot of fun. But then, so that's how I got on the story. I mean, that initial time, Elizabeth Taylor's going to Singapore.
That's crazy.
And then we went to Singapore and then watched the Dangerous Tour basically fall apart.
Yeah.
That's when.
Wow.
You remember the famous photo when Michael is holding a child?
Of course.
I'm pretty sure that's when we were in Singapore.
Yeah.
The nice thing about it is my dear friend, the cameraman, Alex Fragnito, had a buddy who was the bureau chief for the British Broadcasting Company who was stationed in Singapore, and he hooked us up with the nicest hotel rooms we have ever stayed in.
Nice.
So we had a nice place to stay. We're following Jackson, and we make friends with, of all people, the guy, I think he was French, a French guy who was the basic money man for the whole thing. And, he led us into the suites of offices in apartment buildings that they had, basically that traveled with this. And, he was pretty philosophical about it was only money. But he said, this was truly a $1 billion enterprise.
Wow. back then.
Launching an album, the stature of the day. You know, Michael Jackson's albums, everything was big, and that was in the just when everything was dropping. I don't know how they quantify this, but double platinum before.
I remember all of that when I was younger.
Yep.
The black or white, Dangerous. And
phenomenal music.
That female guitar player.
Yeah, extraordinary.
On the tour.
Yeah.
I remember seeing videos of the tour. I couldn't imagine being there and seeing that massive crowd.
Because it was the promoter who basically got us in, green-lighted us to get in. We were up pretty close backstage, so we ended looking right up at Jackson with the monitors, then making him 1,000 feet tall. And the guy knew how to put on a show.
For sure,
he was always putting on a show, though. That was part of the problem. Right?
Yeah. I know what the charges are. I'm just telling you what our role in the story was.
So, out of all those years working for Hard Copy and Current Affair, what was your favorite story that you worked on?
Oh, I don't. Do
you have one or two?
I have a story. I have a story that I did early in my career when I was a young reporter in Utah, and I was running off to do a story in southern Utah with a camera guy. And as we're going to this one story, we see this old man and a young boy in sort of a self-made covered wagon rolling along the side of the freeway. And we said to each other, if they're there when we come back from this other stupid story, we got to stop and talk to them. And that stopping and talking to them, this was 40 years ago. That may be my favorite story still. It's just a man with his son out, and their final, they lived off the land, and the kid was taught by the dad. And they were sort of hillbilly, running around a self-made covered wagon.
Wow.
A team of horses and everything, and the man seemed very loving towards his son. And when they rode away from me, they said, "All we leave behind is our footprints," and of course, the rain washes them away.
Oh wow!
And it was just poetic, and and I've always maybe it's being a dad. I love men who are good fathers.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of bad fathers, and they do a lot of damage to their kids. And I covered a lot of those stories, so I'm always like, I admire a man who, is a good dad.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I guess.
All these years when you're, getting punched out and stuff, were there any times where you were legitimate scared?
Probably a lot more times than I should have been a lot more times than I was. And that's why I told you I was sitting up straight because I'm just this compilation of now all these injuries that I've inflicted on myself over the years. But I've been shot at, I've been punched. I know I've made my way onto a number of powerful people's enemies lists.
Who shot at you?
We got shot at in the L.A. riots.
Jesus.
Yeah. When we early on, we got it on the streets, and
that's insane.
And these guys were looting a store, and we were just there shooting pictures of them. And one of them put down whatever he had in his hands and pulled out.
Oh my!
Bum, bum. You definitely. It's a moment of clarity when somebody's trying to kill you.
Have you ever just been like, "Is this worth it?"
You see, I'd feel.
I mean, if after someone shot at me, I'd be like, "Whoa."
No, maybe I'm not smart enough to have the self-restraint alarms that. But I just enjoyed. I felt lucky because I really am sort of an adrenaline junkie. Hyperactive.
It sounds very, very exciting for sure.
Hyperactive as heck, and I basically found a way for somebody to pay me to have adventures.
Yeah,
that was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, a lot of really cool adventures. That's for sure.
Yeah, I feel lucky.
So what brought you from leaving those big shows like that to doing
getting fired?
Well, no. I mean, did you not want to? Did you want to?
When we after the incident where the man threw the punch at me, again, I was just doing a freelance gig. I was picking up a little side work at the time. Wasn't even going to get mentioned in that story. But when the guy threw the punch at me, the story went from from, we're going to expose the fraudulent practices of these medical things, sort of a boring tease. It went to, our producer Mike Watkiss confronts this guy. Boom, boom. And that's what they ran in these breathless ads. So I hadn't been on television after being canned from A Current Affair for a number of months. I mean, I was sort of fading off into the woodwork, thinking my career may be over. Get this one freelance gig through hard copy. They send me out to do this thing, and suddenly I go from just picking up an interview and handing it to some other producer to being, we confront this guy, and they throw these. And it went, I think it was Memorial Day weekend. It was a holiday weekend. They run these breathless ads showing me on national television all weekend long. Then they run the damn story where they show the confrontation about 6 times, as we did in tabloid. Hit him, hit him, and hit him again.
Yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
And then it runs on television. Following day, I'm sitting down in some little grubby cubicle at the Paramount lot, hoping I'm going to get another freelance gig. And some guy calls me out of the woodwork, and it's the new news director here at Channel 3. And he saw you get punched. Come on board.
It must have been nice to, because a lot of the stories here were locals, to have something stationary maybe after traveling.
Yeah,
for so long.
and that was sort of a nice thing. Hard Copy did offer me a job to stay in L.A. at the same time that these guys made a job offer to me, and they offered me a lot more money. But to be honest with you, at that point we had my son. And I knew that I would be a horrible father if I stayed in L.A. and worked for those national shows, because those national shows require you to drop everything and go live in Portland, Oregon for 3 months, or chase a Michael Jackson all over the world for a year. And I knew that I'd be a lousy dad.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
cool.
I said no, and I came here. And these guys, the nice thing about it, they traveled me enough that I still got sort of a taste of, they sent me to Europe a number of times to do Princess Di coverage. I've been, and then the thing that they really green lighted for me, which I'm really grateful for, is they let me go after that whole Warren Jeffs Colorado City thing.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about that. Well, I know about your documentary.
And the thing about that also is something that you've kind of brought on a bit here, is talking about children, and how you talked about how important it is for you to be a father, and you like that stuff. And then you look at people like Warren Jeffs.
I'm not saying that I'm any role model, but but I do like people at least try to fulfill their responsibility.
Exactly. But you look at what Warren Jeffs did and does, and it kind of I could see that you want to take that out.
Well, I guess. In some ways, my wife is more sort of whatever this is than I am. But we came here some years. When we came here, she and I both grew up in Utah and have this sort of that background. We both have polygamous in our family trees, and certainly know this sort of philosophy and what goes on in some of what was going on in some of the larger communities. And I didn't feel like the story was being told very well, and it was never very thorough or thought, understanding the real toll that was being taken on the women and the children in those communities. And so when we came here, my wife, it was her blessing. I went all over and started chasing those things down. And again, nobody was really doing anything at the time, and there were the problems of abusing the children and the women. And so I figured if nobody pays attention unless we can find the victims, confront the perpetrators, and then lay it in the laps of the law enforcement, and they got to do something. And that's what we started to do. And it took unfortunately, it took a lot longer than I thought it would be. I figured if we get, they were a bunch of lazy bastards, and they hadn't done anything up to that point really significant. And but it was, I was just telling the stories. I always caution people that any credit I get on this thing, I was just merely the scribe. There's a handful of brave women who, 25, 30 years ago now, sort of coalesced and decided they weren't going to take it anymore. And they'd really just crushed women, put them in mental institutions, under the threat that they'd keep their kids. So women who got out of there never talked. But there was a handful of really brave women, and I can tell you their names: Flora Jessup, Penny Peterson, Ruth Stubbs, Lenore Holm. That was some of the first generation. There's been others. But they started this revolution. They just said, we got out of there. We know that what's going on, and we're not going to allow this to continue to our nieces and nephews and little sisters and little brothers. And they started raising holy hell. And really developed sort of an underground railroad because there was no place to go. If women or children ran, law enforcement elsewhere would just turn them over to the cops up there, and that was not a good solution because that meant right back to Warren Jeffs and his dad. So anyhow, we just started raising hell over time. It just took a long time, but Warren got thrown in prison, and there's a lot of changes up in Colorado City and Hilldale, and I hope that's all for the good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do they still have those communities? I know they a lot of them moved to Mexico and stuff like that.
Well, and that's a whole different sort of group. Those Mexican, where we heard about that horrible story of the family, and I know some of the extended family members of the people that were killed in that.
Recently,
and they're dear friends of mine, and a couple of women are old friends and colleagues, and I admire them a lot. But that's a different. They've been down there for a long time. But it's sort of interrelated with the sort of breaking off of the original Mormon Church, and then find various groups have sort of developed their own ways of living. And the communities down in Mexico, they've been there for generations.
Yeah, a long time.
Well, I meant I was saying I know there's some in Mexico, but do they still have those communities in the United States?
Yeah, oh yeah, and the thing that was unique about Hilldale and Colorado City is that they got down there in the middle of nowhere, and they're very industrious people, and they built these two communities up, and over time, they basically morphed from being this little isolated place to being an entire municipality.
Yeah, they're big time now.
So you have in every sense of the word theocracy, a church-run state, and with a fairly malignant kind of person like Warren Jeffs, you have I say this, I think it's a cult, and I've always thought it's a cult. But so you basically now, in my interpretation, or my eyes, a cult running an entire municipal structure, from your water to your electricity to your cops to everything else. And to boot, all of the land is owned in this common trust. So you can go build a home up there at your own expense, but you ever get crosswise with the church or the prophet, we own the land, so we'll throw your ass out of here. So it was a horrible situation that had grown up over, and then you had a guy like Warren Jeffs, who I always argued was sort of a historic inevitability. In a vacuum where there are no checks and balances, things just get worse and worse and weirder, and that's what happened over the course of time. And Warren was the product of he was in a power structure that he inherited, where he knew he could do whatever the hell he wanted. And he'd always known that. And he'd always known that as sort of one of the children of this other powerful man.
That's crazy. I was able to get that out of control. Like a whole, municipal.
Well, what
took time.
And there was lots of people knew that there were bad things going on there. There were a whole slew of officials throughout this state. Handful of brave people who stood up and tried to do some noble things along the way. But it really took a lot of pushing, and people like Flora Jessup, who was a resident here in the Valley, a good friend of mine, and again, Penny and Flora, and a couple of young women named Fawn Holm and Broadbent. Just a lot of folks and they're the heroes. Yeah. Again, I told the stories and sort of went along for the wild ride, and I enjoyed that. It confronted these guys because it was interesting. I went up there so often and raised so much hell with those guys that I'd see other reporters occasionally drop in up in Colorado City, and these tough guys come get all chesty with them and chase them around in trucks. I go up there, I can't find those guys. I can't find a cop to talk to. The streets sort of emptied out when we were there. It's like, and I think it's because at the end of the day, not trying to be too much of a tough guy, but it's because I knew the follow-up questions. Those guys were good at coming up and, what are you guys doing up here to the young girls? Well, we're not doing it. They had their standard propaganda. But I've been following the story long enough that I always knew the follow-up question. the follow-up question. There was an interesting moment down in Texas when with that whole raid on Warren Jeff's compound down in Texas. And they took the children off, and there was, public opinion was all over. You can't, how dare them take all these kids? And some people say, get them out of there. And Texas was sort of on the fence at that time, and the state of Texas, what to do with all these hundreds of kids after this dramatic raid. And the FLDS community down in Texas decided that it would be sort of they're pretty good at sort of promoting a message when they want to sort of play the sympathy factor. And they just opened the gates of that big compound down in Texas, started letting people in, camera crew after camera crew, ushering them in with one of their lawyers, their well-known lawyers from Salt Lake City, who I knew very well, knew me. And literally camera crews, live trucks, TV, everybody's driving down there. Oprah Winfrey's crew, everybody's going in there. I'm driving down, I'm walking up with my cameraman. We're just going to walk on down. Everybody's welcome. Hey, you! You're not welcome. So literally, they let the media tidal wave in there, and they wouldn't let me in. And then again, I think it's because these guys, I knew the sort of the line that they would give, but the sort of truth behind the abuse of the children and the women, and what they've, I know the people who have lived those stories very well, and they were not about to let some wise guy like me come and ruin their little pity party when they let the entire media. So I was always sort of, I feel good about that moment.
Yeah.
They were willing to talk to everybody else.
Yeah.
Hey, you, buddy.
Yeah.
You're not invited.
I was going to say, that means you're doing something right.
Well, they knew me, and they knew where I was coming from, and I think I knew their bullshit, and they did not want that down there. And it was an amusing moment for me.
But you're a Emmy-winning producer, right? For Colorado City and Underground.
Don't believe all the things you read in that.
That's true, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's my. If I would point to one piece of work that I am most proud of, there's the documentary I did about 15 years ago, and it was done 15 years ago, but it really pulled together nearly 20 years of covering Colorado City and Hilldale. It pulled together stories that I had done 20 plus years prior to that, and I had been covering these stories enough, and I felt at that moment I need to sort of put it all together where we are as far as I'm concerned, and what I know this story to be in one sort of coherent thing. And Channel 3, I basically hit out on weekends and at nights with an editor and an edit bay. We cobbled that thing together over a year, and
that's cool.
They were nice enough to let me run it in prime time, and it would sort of rock the state a little bit, and it helped. And I just felt like, when you do these day-to-day broadcasts, you feel like maybe I made a good point, but it's gone in the ether.
Yeah.
And I felt at that juncture, when we put that documentary together, I really wanted to just make sure I understood where we were and why we were here, and that's what I did.
Well, you got rewarded for it on multiple ways, and an Emmy is nice, but definitely changing the way things are for the better here in the state.
I guess. I hope. At the end of the day, I hope there's some truth to that. I hope so.
Yeah. You can check it out on YouTube, right?
Yeah. I didn't. I tried not to make money from any of that stuff. I've helped a lot of other reporters cover this story, and tried not to take any money because I just sort of want to keep my own motives and insights into this sort of pure. Not trying to make
very cool.
But so I put that documentary up on YouTube, and anybody can watch that.
So if you want to check out Colorado City and the Underground Railroad, it's on Mike Watkiss's YouTube page. You can find Mike Watkiss on YouTube, I'm sure.
If you care to look.
I want to talk about your acting a little bit. I saw that you were in Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I gotta go back and watch it. Now, what'd you do in Dumb and Dumber?
Well, there's one moment. My kids kid me that this whatever I have done in the rest of my career, I will forever best be remembered for 30 seconds in Dumb and Dumber.
You have 30 seconds in Dumb and Dumber?
Next up on A Current Affair.
Oh, that's
the
awesome.
Heartbreaking story of the little blind Rhode Island boy who was duped into buying a dead parakeet. Line has made me a lot of money. I'm still getting, all I can tell you, gentlemen, is I'm still getting residual checks.
That is so fucking badass, dude. That's
25
awesome.
years, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I totally remember that now.
So
Yeah,
did that spark the acting bug?
Actually, first film I did was with Tommy Lee Jones.
Wow.
And an old cowboy actor by the name of Ben Johnson.
Oh, I remember Ben. I know Ben Johnson.
Great.
I'm a huge old movie fan.
I was honored to be in there's one scene where I'm in one scene with, I believe, 2 or 3 Academy Award winners.
Wow.
I played a reporter in a movie called, it was not Tommy's greatest film, let's be honest. It was called A Stranger on My Land, sort of a bad TV movie but I played a reporter in that. That was the first film I did. But you know what? I started acting when I was a little kid, and sort of always had the acting bug, and found that the journalism and being on television sort of was satisfied that need, and also got me traveling and telling interesting stories. So
right when you got that film with Tommy Lee Jones, you probably got your sidecar, I don't know, because you had a line.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Soon thereafter, I've had a SAG card now. I'm a proud member for 30 plus years, I guess. More than that, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been a member for many years, since the late 80s.
Very cool.
Would you act throughout the reporting years, or
I did some. They sort of frowned on it, and we're not. But I did some of it anyhow. Not gonna lie. Made a couple of films, and made a number of them here. Made one really was sort of a classic, and won a whole slew of Emmys and everything with Holly Hunter and Beau Bridges, a funny film called The Positively True Adventure of the Alleged Texas Cheerleading Murdering Mom.
Oh,
about that
shit.
wacky lady who tried to hire a hitman to whack her friend to get her daughter on the cheerleading team. You remember that? That was did that one too, and so I got a couple of fairly big time films early on that helped me get my SAG card. But that was a funny one.
Ashtray is over there. The funny thing you talk about that murdering mom thing is if you remember, we had a little thing here in the Valley where there was a cheerleading coach at Deer Valley High School who got threatened by a mom on the team right shortly after that story hit.
You know what? I was busy in Channelview, Texas, covering that story, so I was unaware of the Arizona similar story.
It was just it's funny you brought that up because we were just talking about that the other day with Chris.
People are crazy.
Yes, they are really crazy.
That makes for great stories, right?
I feel like I obliged to tell that I'm sitting so weird because I got a bad
Oh, you're
back.
fine. I think
No.
I you would have never known. But
Yeah.
Anybody?
Are you
out there.
okay?
No, I'm good.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
good. I just feel like I look like I'm about to get electrocuted. I'm not really that uncomfortable.
Actually, you are. Bring them in.
Here we go.
No, I also, when I was doing this little research before you're coming on, I read that you were a stuntman and a roadie. Is that true? I think I got that from your Facebook.
Yeah, well, stuntman, I'm as broke up as I am because I've always done my own stunts.
I figured while you were reporting,
I've done a few stupid
You'd run into
things.
a hailstorm. I mean, you'd run into all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah, you should run into.
But what about roadie? I mean, were you?
Well, I got a close personal friend, i.e., my wife, who's a musician, and I had been schlepping her gear for 40 plus years now. And if that doesn't qualify as a roadie, I don't know.
It does.
To damn near every gig she's ever done, and I love it, and she's my favorite singer, so. I do it, with joy in my heart. But I have been schlepping gear, and then early on, an old cameraman told me a funny story when I was a young reporter, trying to put me in my place. And he says, kid, the only thing that reporters are good for is carrying the sticks and mumbling a few words. So I've always took it upon myself. I figured he's probably right, so I at least owe to the guy to carry the sticks. So I've been carrying gear. I never. That's why I had long romances with camera operators, because I tried to, take it.
Be respectful.
Well, I never asked them to do anything I wouldn't do myself, ever.
Very cool.
Well, we're always looking for new music. What does your wife do?
Darryl Christ, she's a singer. You can find her somewhere. She's probably lurking around somewhere on the internet too.
What kind of music?
All kinds, everything from Sinatra to
cool.
to the Doors.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Are you interested in music yourself? Or?
I love music. I have no ability.
No ability to play.
No
Just
ability.
like me.
Zero ability.
I'm right
So,
there with you.
I'm good at carrying the heavy objects.
You probably do, but you just...
Not really. I'm not much of a singer. Don't have much of an ear for it. But, I love carrying the gear and being in the backstage and, living that. I'm happy with the role of a roadie, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's
to be right there, yeah.
I think it's a pretty good gig.
Yeah. I used to roadie for my friends' bands and shit.
Yeah,
so because
there
I
you go.
used to play in bands and stuff. So, but so I know recently you're working on a book. Do you have any plans for that to drop, or is he just taking it casually, or?
I've been writing some of the crazy stories that we've referenced here today. I've been trying to put together, best I can, some sort of memory of them while they're fresh. Some of the crazy details behind the morning they found the bodies of Ron and Nicole sitting in a little prison, a little jail room about this close to Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. I've been writing some, essays, and some of these I've sort of been writing and rewriting for 40 years.
When you were telling a lot of these stories, I'm thinking in my head, like, there needs to be more movies. There are movies out there following, reporters, but did you ever think about maybe writing it as a script?
Well, and, my son is an actor, and we've scribbled some stuff. There are just days I just don't know from it. Half of it's sort of an exorcism. I feel like I need to sort of get rid of some of these stories.
Yeah, just therapeutic to write. And
I guess therapeutic's probably the right way to say it.
Yeah. I encourage everyone to write, even if they're not going to publish it. I think writing's a very therapeutic thing to do.
Right. I would concur.
Yeah.
I would certainly concur.
And I would definitely read your book.
Well, I appreciate it. So there are days
that's why we wanted you on the show to talk about this.
There are days when I to get up my computer where I've been writing the thing, and I think I'm going to walk out in the desert and find an abandoned mine shaft, and I'm going to throw this damn thing down and have done with this stuff, because I'm just...
A lot of good writers think the same thing.
sick of it. And there is the interesting dilemma of how do you publish things now.
Easy. You just go on Amazon. Anyone can go and publish a book on Amazon, and they send you a hard copy.
I'm so old-fashioned.
I'm sure your son knows about how to do that, but you don't have to find a publisher these days. Like, anyone could put out a book and then put it on Amazon.
And then I'll put it out, and I'm afraid no one will read it. Oh. Much of this, but that's
not only will I read it.
You're right. You guys are an interesting test case. May I ask how old you are?
39.
39. I'll be 40 in November.
Okay. All right. Well, this is what you guys are sort of the last vestiges of people who are even going to remember half the stories I cover. And now I'm thinking, does anybody really give a damn?
They do. Hell yeah, they do.
You're right about that age. The age thing.
Some of this stuff is now really slipped into what qualifies as ancient history in a generation. It might as well have been the Gettysburg Address.
That's how, because I don't mean to talk about films real quick, but when you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I'm sure you've seen that
a couple of times.
Well, I feel like people under the age of 30
have no point of reference about
so the
whatever.
ending doesn't have the same payoff as it does, say, for us, because
the same payoff or the utter shock value.
Because I didn't grow up with the story, but I knew about it and I was obsessive about it. You know what I mean? So I know what you're saying about those stories are kind of.
Right.
But to me, I mean, shit. I grew up in the '90s. I remember Tonya Harding. I remember OJ. I remember where I was at watching OJ and and all that shit.
Watching the New York Knicks Houston Rockets game.
Yeah, exactly. And then also when in high school when his Bronco was on the freeway. Or
no,
not in high school when the Bronco was the freeway. When he was not guilty.
Yeah,
they let us watch it and shit. That was crazy.
Yeah,
that was nuts.
So I think there is.
We were there, boys.
A lot of people that would read it.
We were there.
I think you should. Crazy. I agree with him. I think you should write that book because people. You said that there's people that it's ancient history, but people love that are our age love to reminisce about that stuff,
And
man.
who knows? People 50 years from now will want to learn about the
Yeah.
90s, and
And
then
that's
read
what I
it.
mean.
Yeah.
That's
So it's like
exactly what I'm getting
it's a
at.
document of history.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Is that
From your perspective,
throw that
too.
down?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Because not a lot of people were in there to see all that shit that
That's
you did. You know what I'm
that's
saying?
the one
like
thing
from
that-
your perspective.
the
you
one
know?
thing I feel. Yeah.
So you
again,
have that
just-
advantage.
I just sort of tingly when I just think about it. Just I don't know why I got a front row seat for so much
Yeah.
stuff and live to tell the tale.
It's freaking cool.
Dude, you could write that into a script and it could be a film. Have you ever seen Nightcrawler?
I did
not that
that.
you're a creepy guy. But
No. You know, and I think I know some of the camera guys that they sort of base that on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely.
Did that shit
You
really
were
go
around
on?
for that time, yeah.
Did people
that
really do
that
that?
was way excessive. I mean, they definitely took it, but but is there that kind of competitive zeal on the streets of a big city? Certainly back. I don't know what's going on today. Now the problem, what problem or whatever, the blessing or curse is now everybody's a paparazzi because they got their damn cell phones.
True.
Yep.
I knew some of the. Speaking of which, I knew some of the really classic paparazzi guys who elevated it to they were the Michelangelos and the.
Before the song was out.
Yeah, I mean a guy named E.L. Woody and a guy named Phil Ramey. Phil Ramey's the guy who literally threw himself on the hood of a car to shoot through a windshield as they were taking the body of Rock Hudson out
Jesus.
of that hotel.
Wow.
Is he a scavenger? Is he a bad man for doing that? Perhaps you can argue whatever you think about the
He's
morality.
trying to make a buck.
But there were a handful of guys who took the whole the thing to paparazzi way into a level, and then
there's
then they
lines.
spoiled it by every moron with a cell phone having. There were guys who were just brilliant at what they did.
Yeah.
You
Well, it was
know, whether
different
you-
back then. It was also different. It was funny because they had a little bit more rules they followed. There's no rules anymore. It's like
Yeah,
Wild
I
West
just
out there.
remember. Yeah,
You got
it'd be opposite.
you got airplane pilots who are landing planes to drop a story about their guys having guns or stuff in the
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I guess that's true.
Like-
And these guys. Well, they everybody, I guess, is tapped into TMZ.
Yeah.
But this is back in the sort of. It was a golden day of Hollywood. These guys, they tipped every waiter and every and valet. And you build up a circuit. They knew, who was going to the men's
It was
room.
like a web.
The men's room, 10 minutes before the guy needed to take a leak. I mean, they were plugged in.
Yeah.
Celebrities were more mysterious back then, though, because they weren't all up in social media and showing themselves on their stories.
I guess
and
it
stuff,
depends
so
on who.
you know what I
So
mean?
there's still celebrities who still maintain
maintain that,
some
like,
sort of,
yeah.
I mean,
But
that's
that's like I
again-
feel like that's a dying thing, though, like because most celebrities are just constantly showing themselves and doing whatever on their own personal time. Where back then it was like more mysterious. So it's like, what are these people like?
Yeah. Yeah.
So. Obviously, I don't know. The news media has changed completely since.
Yeah, and I've been out of it long enough. It's one of those kind of things. One constant is in the news business is it's always changing.
Yep.
And I'm out 15 months and it probably changed so much I wouldn't recognize it anymore. Happens quick.
So are you happy being out of it?
Yeah, well, I'm happy not doing that. The thing I'm happy about is not having the sort of pressure developing in my chest every day at 2:00. Am I going to make air? Even after 40 years, you still have paranoia, and you think I'm not really that good. And today I'm going to drop the ball, and they're going to realize I've been making this all up. And the tension, am I going to make it?
That's
and am I
so
gonna,
weird.
That's
and am I
crazy.
going to make am I going to make my time slot, which is the gold standard of television. It doesn't matter what's happened. You can be shot, but you still better make slot.
So what is it? You get till 2 p.m. to have your story.
No,
filmed
it's
and
just
shot,
it was
or-
just sort of that sort of you
Is the
you
story
start
good enough?
internalizing the metabolism of a timetable, and I'm sort of glad that's what I'm saying. My body, you feel like I'd done it for so long. Is like there was a point in the afternoon where I sort of did this gut check. Am I where I should be? Because if I'm not, I may not make air.
Yeah.
And I still panic like a rookie every day. And so I miss
It means
that.
you care for it.
That's what I was going to say.
Do
And
I
think
miss
that's good
it?
for
No.
other people. Yeah,
Man, do I miss it? I don't miss that kind of stuff. But the camaraderie and the adventure I had with a handful of those shooters. So.
Do you ever find yourself going down there for break time and drinking coffee?
Nah, you know what? I don't know. I think no, I haven't. But I've run into friends that I work with.
Yeah.
And still in touch with a lot of them. So.
Well, I'm really glad that you said that, because as a professional as you are, and a legend, and for you to say that, you got nervous every day like that, that's good for every normal person to hear when they're, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I really.
I don't know if I'm a
that.
normal person, but whatever. Yeah, I think if you care about it, you still sort of get nervous and not going to be able to pull it off.
Right on.
Very cool.
Well, is there anything that you want to promote, or where people can find you, or any movies coming out that you did, or
what am I doing? Yeah, I got a whole slew of movies that are coming out. I got 5 films that are coming out, and I wish I knew more about the timetables. The Dark Side of Opulent.
Oh yeah.
The Dark Side of Opulent 2. 2 films based in a little Arizona town, all run by gangsters, and I'm one of the gangsters who continues to survive through the various episodes, and we're about to start shooting Dark Side of Opulent 3 in March of this year.
I think someone just tagged me in an audition for that. They
Well,
needed
there
a
you go.
skinny white dude, so I got tagged in.
There
for
you
the
go. Well,
audition.
then we're gonna share. We're gonna share FaceTime.
No, I know Christina's in that. I know Christina and I think a couple other actors.
Yeah.
In that film,
You got 2 films done in Dark Side of Opulent, and then we're gonna shoot Dark Side of Opulent 3. I'm trying to pull something up on my computer. Is that cool?
No, you're totally fine,
yeah,
man.
This is chill, man.
And then we shot this real fun little costume drama called the Day of the White Lotus, and that should be coming out. Oh, and then a film called Cult Cartel, which is sort of a dramatization of the whole Colorado City.
Oh, that's
thing.
cool.
And some good friends of mine put it together,
That's
Diana
cool.
Davis and Paul Davis, in the second film on the topic. And I play a cameo in the film as an FBI agent.
Perfect.
So-
is
It was good
this
fun.
something that someone else is doing, coincidentally, or you?
I had nothing to do with the
Oh, that's
film.
crazy.
I spoke to Paul and Diana and they put together a couple of films now. This is the second film. I think it's going to come out in March.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Cult Cartel. I'm just going to use your valuable airtime to sit around and look at my computer.
No,
So I'm so
you should
sorry.
see our last episode. We were doing all kinds of weird shit.
Yeah.
Well, let me just something
I do want to shout out a couple things. I want to shout out This, That, and the Other. Check out that show. Check out Absolute Geek Podcast. Check out Tales from the Flip Side. They just had their 100th episode.
The AZ80 HD podcast.
There we go.
Quickscopeapparel.com.
Yeah.
Bang Salon.
I need a haircut.
Okay.
Maybe.
You can get banged by
this
Jordan.
is yeah. Yeah. So this is the project I have been working on. This is the cover of my book.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
You guys,
Oh, that's badass.
this is the first podcasts are sort of a new thing for me. I think this is my first podcast.
Very
really?
cool.
So I hope
Oh,
I did.
fuck, I'm
yeah.
honored for you to have
I
your
hope
first
I did
podcast. Holy
okay.
shit. Oh,
Yeah.
you did
Anyhow,
awesome,
so I
dude.
got a book that the book is tentatively titled "Story Hustler: Murder, Mayhem, PTSD."
I like it.
I'm telling you, just fucking a publisher, just go on Amazon and publish it
There you
yourself.
go.
And because we've had a couple people on here promoting their books, and that's what. And I asked them, I was like,
Is that right? Yeah.
how do you get these hard copies? And they did it through Amazon. So
Well, if I don't throw it down and abandon mine shaft, I may publish it someday. Yeah.
awesome. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to come
Well, very
on.
kind of
and,
you guys. Thank you.
Thank
when
you.
your book does come out, we'd be honored for you to come back and talk about it, and
Thanks. It's been a
get
lot
some
of
more
fun.
people. So, and you are welcome back
Very
anytime
cool.
if you're ever bored on a Sunday and you want to bullshit and tell us some more stories. We would love to have you. Seriously, any Sunday's open for you, man. So,
Thank you.
we already did our
And
shout-outs.
thank your mother for letting me into your home and
sure.
watching 3 TV.
Well,
Will you please?
To be honest, he passed away in
Oh my.
But she
I'm sorry about that,
it's all good.
but I want you to know that I'm grateful that she let me into your.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Channel 3 was on from morning. It was the news, and then it was fucking soaps. She couldn't wait for like All My Children.
Yeah,
that was her show.
General Hospital.
And then Oprah, and then would be the evening news. You know, so.
God bless her.
So all right,
Thank you, sir.
That is anything else we play?
No, not that I can think of. Definitely check out Hempful Farms, Haters Make Me Famous podcast.
Sweet. Awesome. That is a wrap on episode 64 of the Bogcast.
Bang!